Breaking: car dealers are trying an entirely new tactic a lot of customers never even saw coming. It actually happened to us. Yes, CarMax, Carvana, a couple of examples of some of the giant car sellers over on the US side of the border are classic examples of how they can grab a vehicle from a customer, give appropriate amount of cash, and of course set them on their way, reselling it of course for 2, 3, 4 points, multiple percentages above what they paid for. A lot of customers are looking at getting out of their debts, their loans, maybe wanting to move into something else, and those big car retailers are there to help the customers along their way. And some new tactics that many car dealers are trying on unsuspecting customers. Yes, if you've got a late model vehicle, a used vehicle that you take in for servicing, a late model vehicle that you often visit the dealer for parts, servicing, changing, maintenance, you name it, repairs, those dealers are literally taking advantage of you in a newfound way. Now, back in 22, we were ready to buy a new car, but we wanted to get something that was sort of the older generation. We knew that some of these popular models would be hard to come by later on. We saw the shortages in the industry, as a lot of you have seen. Shortages both on the new car sector and as well as the new cars, which we're now seeing used car shortages all over, and dealers are trying to get their hands on as much inventory as they possibly can. But when we saw this car, we knew that they were changing. They were going with a hybrid. So obviously with the new electrification, hybrid technology, and some of the different drivetrains meant that this was one of the last reliable, durable, robust, more traditional Toyota. And we knew we were going to keep it for a while. So this is what we ordered. It was literally the next model was just around the corner a year or 2 years later. And so we're glad we bought this vehicle. No accidents, it's been absolutely perfect, flawless, great on fuel, it's reliable, and quite honestly, it's very practical. So no regrets. But vehicles like this are extremely sought after. Yes, dealers are trying to get their hands on these types of products that don't have incidents, accidents, products that don't have problems, products that are reputable manufacturers, and certainly products that they know they can sell for a premium dollar. And cars like the Toyota Camry, the Corolla, RAV4s, Highlanders, any of these popular Toyota products, even the 4Runner is one of those very popular models. If you happen to have one of those late generation ones from the previous generation with the V6, you know those were worth a mint right now. But we bought this car and we realized something new that's going on in the dealership network space. This is a new tactic, a new trick, and something that they're trying to pull over on a lot of unsuspecting customers. You just want to be aware of this because they're going to use your visit to the dealership for your next service appointment as an opportunity to try to pull a fast one over on you. See, the dealers know what's selling. The dealers know what's popular. They got the ears to the tracks and they're always listening. They know that hybridization is something that not everybody's getting on board with, and certain electrification is not. Also, a lot of extra electronics in the cockpit of the vehicle is something that a lot of customers aren't getting all that excited about. That's why vehicles like this, they know are going to be easy to sell. So if you've got a used vehicle that has some of this older technology, you've got older switches, older controls, lots of standard knobs and buttons and other controls. You get that 8-speed automatic transmission or some of these torque converter autos, which are hard to find because a lot of manufacturers are going with things like CVTs, but that's besides the point. A very conventionally dressed Toyota like this vehicle is one that seems to be hard to find and quite sought after. And we found that out. Before we bought this vehicle, we were struggling looking high, looking low for good used late model vehicles, but to no avail. Everything we were looking at had higher miles on it, accident history, a story, a collision, something to it. And it's hard to find good quality used vehicles, at least within 2 or 3 years of age, it seems. Yeah, if you look around, you could find 10, 15, 20-year-old vehicles. There's products out there. But the dealers aren't in the process of making money on older clapped out stuff. They need inventory that's typically in that 1 to 5 year time frame. That's where they make their money. That's where the margins are, and they have a better way of tracking the true value of those vehicles. But this vehicle here, we had this in the service shop a couple months back, and we thought something was peculiar. So this is how this story goes, and this is a very common tactic. We thought we were a one-off, and we even thought maybe this was localized dealership situation only to find this is not. This is actually a tactic going on across pretty much the nation, US, Canada. What's going on now? We know that the inventory levels are dropping. We're down to just over 2 million products or vehicles across the used car sector. We know that the average price, transaction price, is about $25K. And we know that 39 days supply is roughly the amount of inventory each dealer has. And I've spoken about this in a very previous video, but I want to expand on that because this is exactly what's happening now. Because of the low inventory levels, because of the high prices of new cars, a lot of people are shopping around for the used stuff. And the used cars, of course, now are commanding a little bit more money. We're seeing prices edge up. We're seeing vehicles, the average transaction price edging up for late model used vehicles, 1 to 2% here in the last 6 months. It's clear that it's trending upwards. The costs are increasing. Why is that? Because of the shortages. You often ask yourself, where do the dealers get their used inventory? There's generally a couple of places. One, of course, they're going to get it from trade-ins. People buy new vehicles, they're always going to ask, do you have something to trade? And quite often, that's a source of some of their inventory. But unfortunately, a lot of the trade-ins aren't worthy. Some of the trade-ins are junk. Some of the trade-ins have extremely high mileage or products that maybe take way too much reconditioning, and they just simply don't want to handle that type of vehicle. So not every vehicle that gets traded in gets redressed and put back on the lot. So unfortunately, they sift through the chaff. A lot of those vehicles go to auction, okay? So then how do they get some of their other inventory? A lot of it, of course, is the auctions. A lot of them are closed dealer auctions where they're able to capitalize on the dealer network. You know, the dealers bring in vehicles. A lot of times they're lease returns. I worked at an auction like that once myself many, many moons ago. I worked for Ford Auction, a closed auction exclusive for dealers only. And I saw how the ins and outs of that works. But ultimately, it's trading of hands. The dealers, they all know each other. They're all shaking hands. They're swapping inventory or, you know, doing all kinds of little exchange deals across the board. Hey, I've got this Ford. Yeah, I've got this Honda. And they'll do a switch deal or some other arrangement. So there's always behind the scenes trades, but there's often auctions that they deal with as well. So with that said, you know, in my experience with that, that's one of the sources of getting some of their inventory. Of course, a lot of it's their network. They'll reach out to other dealers maybe across the city, across the province or state, and even across the country, possibly through some of their networks and affiliates, to see if they've got some other inventory that they can maybe steal from one place, bring to another. But ultimately, the inventories are low and they're shrinking at an alarming rate. So this is getting harder and harder. So they're having to come up with new tactics. And one of them is something that we found out. When we booked our car in here, this little Toyota, we booked it in for a service. You know, we had the service reminder on there and it told us that, okay, it was time, it was due for oil, filters, rotation, tire rotation. They always checked the floor mats on there as well. But it was time for your standard annual service, brake checks and the like. Well, prior to that, we got a call from the service manager. Actually, the general manager reached out to us and said, hey, you know, while your vehicle's in here, would you have any opposition just to us to just do a quick appraisal on it? No commitment, no harm, no foul. We'll just do appraisal. We'll say, hey, what we see your vehicle's worth. And if there's any possibility we can help you get you into your next new dream car by Toyota, we'll certainly be willing to talk about it, but there's no commitment. We said, you know what? No, we're good. We're happy with what we've got. We know that trading up usually means we're going to have to take on more loan, more debt. And we're quite satisfied with this car. It's great. It's been running well. And quite honestly, it's affordable and it's paid off. So that's the main key. Affordability, live within your means, and a vehicle that you don't have to carry debt on. Ultimately, if you can pay off your vehicle or even not have a car loan at all, is ultimately the best place to be. It's going to be a position of comfort. You're going to sleep better at night. And you're not going to worry about those big car payments. You know, the average car payment today, we know, is $750 to $800 per month. That's the average. With many people, about 1 in 5 are over $1,000 a month these days. So people are getting in over their head. So getting into a car that we were able to pay off in short order was a great situation. And the last thing we wanted to do was trade this in and having to take on another loan for another $20,000 or $30,000 to upgrade this even to the entry point of a brand new Camry, which is essentially the same car, except it's a hybrid. So we got off the phone and they said, yeah, that's no problem. No problem. We could appreciate that. So come the day of servicing, 2 or 3 weeks later, we took the vehicle in for servicing. which that's another story. And I've shared that storyline. We weren't satisfied with the servicing, but that's another conversation. And I'll share the link at the end of the video because that's over on Exotic Car Play Place. I shared the entire story. And another thing that's actually going on in the car market today, in these used car markets, it's absolutely tragic what a lot of these dealers are doing, both new and used. But these dealers are, in some cases, pulling a fast one over on you. And I want to share that with you. This was a recent service experience. Definitely check it out at the end of the video. But more to the story. We go in upon the completion of the service. We grab the keys, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, the manager is there to greet us with some paperwork. And he says, you know what? We just took it upon ourselves to run an evaluation of the value of your car. And we just thought we'd share that with you. Just information, again, no commitment. But we said that we weren't interested. Why are you doing this ahead anyway? Well, it doesn't cost anything. Like, it's just information for your own good, they said. I said, well, we didn't ask for that. We didn't want that. And why are you going ahead and doing this anyway? So they did it. And this is a common tactic now that's starting to happen. Because of these shortages of inventory, they're trying to get vehicles that a lot of people were buying few years ago that they know, or maybe lease returns, buybacks. And lease returns usually go through the auction. But a lot of these buybacks, or people looking at trading or upgrading, they're looking at trying to get vehicles off of people's hands and get them into new vehicles. That's their line of business, right? Ultimately is moving metal. So moving metal, they have to sell new inventory. If they don't sell new inventory because people are constantly happy with their old vehicles, well, that business doesn't have a great value proposition then, does it? So they gave us this written estimate anyhow, and we reviewed it, and basically what it said was, we know what the value of this car is. And I shared in a previous video that the average markup that a dealer should apply is only about 15%. So if you're thinking about a $30,000 vehicle, maybe $4,000 off is all you're anticipating. But we've seen these vehicles on the market, and we know how much these command, and certain models like Toyotas and Hondas and Lexus vehicles are holding a good value. So we know what we've got. We've seen it on the retail market. We've seen it in the classifieds, but they gave us an absolute lowball number. So on top of the fact that they went ahead and gave us an assessment anyway, they absolutely went and lowballed us and said, hey, with the big Cheshire smile, said, look, we can get you a great deal, get you in on a new car. And we looked at this and we said, this doesn't even make sense. We saw clapped out units with 120,000 kilometers on it with a $3,000 fender bender fixed, at a reputable shop. But some of those vehicles were going for more money than these guys were offering, and our cars only got 50,000 kilometers with some upgrades. It didn't even come close. Even with that 15% incorporated, they were still way short of the game, in our personal opinion. So that said, it was a bit insulting. But more to the point, this is exactly what's going on. And buyer beware. If you've owning a car of a late model generation, something that is, in good shape, well kept, lower miles, they're going to be looking for your vehicle. They're coming for your car because they're not getting the inventory. Lease returns aren't coming back because we think about 2 to 3 years ago, interest rates are high, basis points kept upping, so that ultimately meant less and less people were inclined to lease and borrow. And sadly, what that means is there's less cars coming back off of lease into the market. Auctions are quieter these days. There's less leases coming back. There's less cars hitting the market, less trade-ins. There's just more old school inventory out there, more people driving the older vehicles. The average vehicle on the road today is about 13 years of age, where it used to be about, say, 8 or 9 years of age only about 10 years ago. People are keeping their vehicles around longer, but these dealers are trying to grab them out of your hands. And so they're offering you deals. Now, in some cases, you might be ready to trade up. You might be ready to trade in. But look at those numbers. I promise you, these dealers are taking it upon themselves as a new tactic to get more inventory because inventory levels are shrinking every single day. And guess what? They're coming for your car. Again, as promised, please do check it out right there. That's one of the situations we had with a recent service visit, this one that we're talking about, and how it absolutely went off the rails. On top of it, you want to check out that video. Hope to see each and every one in the next one, everybody. See you then. Bye-bye.